Welcome to Ride Success, the podcast that takes you on a learning journey to a more productive, creative, and active life. In the podcast, I explore cycling's global trends, community needs, innovative business strategies, and the journeys of remarkable individuals in the world of cycling. Today, I am thrilled to have Kate Auld joining us. Kate is the founder of the Personal Cyclist, a unique cycling initiative designed to empower individuals through the joy of riding bikes. Through her work, she has a profound commitment to building confidence and community among cyclists of all levels. Kate's approach is refreshingly inclusive and supportive. Her work emphasizes not just the physical benefits of cycling, but also its potential to enhance mental well-being and connect diverse groups of people. So join me in this learning journey as Kate shares her inspirational story from discovering a passion for cycling in their late 30s to creating a space where everyone can experience the freedom and fun of riding bikes. But before we get into the podcast, ladies and gentlemen, please remember to subscribe and follow to the podcast wherever you listen to it. It helps me grow it and continue to bring amazing guests. And if you like what you listen to, please remember to leave us a review. Now, back to the podcast. Welcome, Kate, to Ride Success. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Hi, Pedro.
Hi, brilliant. I wanted to start the conversation by kind of framing it. Once a newbie or a person that has no knowledge of cycling wants to get into cycling or sees people riding bikes and like, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could learn how to ride my bike. But there is so many barriers that you have to overcome. There's the distance, that's the kit consideration, there's the fitness level, the time, the costs. And that's just for starters. On top of that, there's also then the representation. The majority of representation in cycling, where you see in UK at least, is white male. And there is a small representation of women riding bikes comparatively to men. And this is where you enter the picture. And I think your journey and your story, I think, sheds a light and kind of has been creating a safe space for women to come and learn how to ride a bike, feel inspired and progress. And I wanted to use this as a framing for our conversation because that is important to what we're going to be talking about. But first, I want to understand a bit more, and for our listeners as well, to understand a bit more about your story. So kind of taking us a few steps back, can you please share the moment for you where you saw and you thought, I think I should give it a try to this business of riding bikes. What happened? What was that like? What has that like magic moment?
I do remember a magic moment, and the irony was that it was when a shed load of white men whizzed past me. Was partly that moment. It's the irony, really. I was living in a really beautiful spa town in North Yorkshire called Harrogate. And 10 years ago, the Tour de France Grand Depart whizzed through my town. I had two sons, very young sons at the time, so a family of all boys. And I didn't grow up in a sporty family particularly. And the Tour de France came to my back garden, and it's a complete cliche, but the party came to town. And I think I'd worked for London 2012 a couple of years prior to that and been part of that experience. Never had I been so close to a sport, which felt like so much of a party in my backyard. And I've been doing a bit of getting back on the bike, thanks to having the kids on holidays to Wales. And I hadn't really been getting on that well with it. But I just thought, God, the roar of the crowd, the atmosphere. I thought, oh, that looks really good fun. This looks really interesting. There's very few sports, I think, that you can get that close to. And we saw it again 2 years later when the UCI World Championships came through Harrogate. Now, I didn't have all the gear. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing in terms of, being a serious cyclist. I just knew that the energy was something I wanted to get a part of. And I thought I was quite an active person, and I was into running and going to the gym and doing various running events. But for me, it was, the bike, there's something about it. And it was a bit like when you get a new car or something, you start spotting cyclists everywhere. And I was seeing guys everywhere. And I was seeing the Tour de France and I was thinking, there's got to be more women doing it as well. And I mean, we'll come back to that, but quite a few of my clients are guys actually. And they say to me, oh God, it's so nice not to speak all the jargon, not to focus on the speed and just enjoy the ride. And I think that's where it all started for me. Yes, it was competitive, the Tour de France. Yes, of course, it was the world's biggest cycle race. But for me, it was just the electricity of being in it. And I thought, God, this looks brilliant. And that's really the moment, I think, for me, that I thought, right, I want a part of that.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, because it's that spirit that you kind of captured right there. It's magical. It allows people to feel inspired and want to take up the sport. I can relate to that. Just like growing up watching the Tour de France, you feel inspired as well to take up the sport, but at a much later age than through my teenage years. But that's kind of the energy that you talk about there. That's kind of, it gets the spark of people wanting to try and take up the sport. So, okay, so that kind of led you to start thinking actively about getting to the sport. But there is more to this story, because you weren't, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said you're not very sporty. How did that kind of, from that kind of moment where you think I should give this a try, to actually trying, what was the process and what were the challenges of actually starting riding your bike?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So for me, it was a, if you can't beat them, join them situation in my personal life, because I have a family of boys and who all want to ride their bikes in different ways. So, you know, whether it be to school, to work, but it had all been quite competitive. And I thought, well, I need to be able to do this. So I could ride a bike. You know, they say the irony is they say it's like just like getting on a bike. I mean, for me, I've been through that journey of, actually, it was pretty scary when I first got back on the bike as an adult, seeing the world through different eyes. You know, as you get older, you are much more risk averse. So I feel like I've been through that journey, and I thought, oh, wouldn't it be really great if there'd been someone or a way of me accessing that information, or someone helping me along the way, in the same way that you would have maybe a PT in the gym, or you would have a tutor, or even like when I learned to ski in my later life, a ski coach, someone who could really help you one-to-one or in a group, just give you a nudge in the right direction. And I started doing more and more cycling. I started doing more and more different sorts of cycling with different sorts of bikes. And I ended up looking around to see what sort of coaching training I could do, and got a bursary through British Cycling to do some coaching training. And that was really where it all started.
Very good. So it's like, but this from the sounds of what you've been saying, is like, it involves quite a bit of research, involves you actively looking for ways, because how do you go about finding out that there is a bursary to become a cycling qualified coach or a British Cycling? How does it happen? Because surely that you have to be looking for things, because
I took the transferable skills. I mean, my previous corporate work life was in communications, all sorts of brands and organizations all around the world. And I just looked and I thought, well, you know, there's loads of activities you can do to stay active, whether it be go to the gym, whether it be ski, but cycling, particularly for me, it just felt like a sort of a strange new world, the bike, the world of the bike. And I thought, I want a piece of it, but I don't know how to access it. So there must be people like me out there, and there must be ways of sharing that joyous feeling of freedom. I mean, the bicycle is an incredible piece of machinery in whatever form it takes. And I just felt like I want to be sharing that with people. And there must be some qualifications that I can do. I can't just go out there and get started. But I did quite a lot of research with people like me, men and women, to ask them, you know, what would they have liked? You know, I knew there were these cycling clubs provide an amazing experience for a lot of people. And then you've got, you know, the kids biking training that most schools do. And interestingly, I get quite a few clients who say to me, "Oh, but Kate, I failed my bike training when I was 11, and it's haunted me ever since." And I feel there's an amazing they do an amazing job with kids in schools. But I'm interested in everybody else. So those that, you know, maybe dabble or just want that confidence and competence to get themselves out on the road, on the trails, and get that freedom.
Yeah. Perhaps, yeah, when you say that, it makes me think about perhaps the people that would like to ride a bike, but don't fit the molds, or think they don't fit the mold of what a cyclist or can look like, or a mountain biker can look like,
Yep.
or wherever. And they feel a bit intimidated by it. And I guess that perhaps is the genesis of kind of the company that you founded. And can you just explain a bit more? It's like what you have founded, the Personal Cyclist, and what has been your mission with the inception of the Personal Cyclist?
Yeah. The aim of the Personal Cyclist is to really inspire and empower and support people of all abilities to find the joy of being on two wheels. So that could be an individual who hasn't been on a bike for years but wants to commute, an individual who is doing a bit of cycling to the shops but wants to do a sportive. It could be an individual who's fallen off their bike, who lacks confidence and self-belief, and everything in between. And so that's what we're aiming at. I mean, fundamentally, it's a health and well-being brand, because it's about helping people's health. It helps the environment, which is very much something that aligns with my values. Fundamentally, it's a sustainable business, but it's about empowering people and to answer the questions that I wish I'd had answers and I found out the hard way.
Yeah, that's a good point. The fact that you have just mentioned found out the hard way. I think, can you just talk a bit more about that experience? Because through conversations with other people that have gotten into the sport of cycling, there's always seems the recurring feedback of, I found out the hard way, or particularly with women, from reading articles, from what I hear as well, conversations in the podcast as well, is that they feel that they feel intimidated by going into a bike shop and asking questions, because there is perhaps a feeling that they don't belong there. Over the years, through this journey that you have been on, what have you learned the hard way? And like, can you please share some stories from your experience?
Yeah, where to begin? How long have you got? I mean, the thing that I have learned is that it's not a closed shop at all. The world of bike, you know, I now really enjoy going into a bike shop, but I totally understand. I worked in quite a lot of retail environments before, and I know how much thought goes into retail, and I know that there are some really cool brands doing some excellent stuff to make that retail environment a lot more open and friendly and welcoming in lots of different ways.
Yeah.
So I'm really encouraged with some of the work that's being done in terms of finding out the hard way. I mean, you name it. So clipless pedals, number one. Where to put myself on the road, the gear, not having the right gear, not having any gear, not having any padded pants, cycling into objects that shouldn't be cycled into, just not planning my route, getting lost, all these things. But actually, I would say that many of them are part of the magic of trying any new sport. As someone that's also done a bit of skiing in my my 40s, I would say part of the fun in some ways of trying something new is experiencing it in different ways. But I think most of the people that come to the Personal Cyclist have got a sense of adventure. And that's one thing that COVID showed me, actually, was that a lot more people like or now enjoy the great outdoors, and we know the benefits of that. So people do generally come to me with a spirit of adventure in some description, and who they want to be challenged. And it is really good for you, we know, to be challenged to try new things. So I would say whilst I have learnt the hard way in terms of, joining groups that were just not my bag, for example, that's part of the experience. And then finding a group of riders that were absolutely my tribe. And it's so personal. I think that's the part of the personal cyclist that I wanted to really, that's why I've called it the personal cyclist, to be able to understand that everybody has a different reason and rationale for wanting to get on a bike, whether it's a competitive sport cycling or jumping on the bike in your everyday clothes to get to the pub and back to save driving the car.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it does make me think about what you just said about having the sense of adventure, kind of the importance of being able to take risks as well. And like accepting that there will be some things that you don't know at the beginning, but it's part of the journey. So you have to enjoy it as well. But I can't help myself but think that, is there a way reducing that journey of like from clueless, let's say, to confident, sharing a group ride or going on an adventure with a group of people that have the same passion for the sport, or just want to have an adventure together? Because it presents a difficult question, because if you have people that are trying to get into the sport but always face the same problems, there's not going to be development. There's not going to be a way of getting more people to ride bikes. And with the personal cyclists, are you closing this gap? Are you making people to a point where they feel confident riding bikes by themselves, with other people, for whatever reason, to that point a bit quicker?
Absolutely. I mean, the reason for the personal cyclist is all about self-belief and enjoyment. The aim is to enjoy the ride, and it's very hard to do something and enjoy it unless you're feeling confident and competent. So the aim is to take an individual. So we'll typically we run individual consultations from which we develop a package or a plan, but we've also run lots of workshops. So I've partnered up with some really cool brands like Live, like the Electric Bike Shop, to pull together events to bring groups together in reality, actually, and online, to really get the sense of, for everybody, that you're not alone and everyone goes through the same self-doubt, and it just happens to be related to cycling, but everybody is nervous about something. And back to your point about safety, absolutely. So there are loads of, I mean, when I was researching to start the personal cyclist, there are typically sort of between 15 and 20 worries, concerns, of which there's about a top 5 of concerns that people have about getting back on the roads specifically, when we're talking here about the roads, but we don't just do road riding. And the perception of risk, and the idea of being safe, where to put yourself on the road, how to manage junctions, what to do with your body position, all these things we go through in some detail, but everybody has a unique experience and they're coming to it from a different position, which is where we can provide tailored support, or certainly for address some of the really common questions and help people feel like they're not alone.
Yeah. So it sounds like you take people on kind of a coaching session where you help them overcome these fears and show them through your own journey, through your own learnings, how to overcome them as well.
We always start slow with everybody, so at the pace of the individual. So we will start, for example, we use lots of closed roads. If we're trying to navigate clipless pedals, always on grassy surfaces, we always ride in a way that the less confident rider feels in a position on the road whereby they are slightly more protected. We always have we've got some really cool clothing that we wear, which people just feel that a little bit less like they're in a car park with cones, but a little bit, but still safe and feeling like they deserve to be on the road. And I think that's a really key point, is that I think I get, all of my clients and all of the people I work with, I think pretty much, apart from the teenagers, are drivers. And my experience is that a lot drivers generally do make good cyclists because they're already road users. So I'm always confident when someone's a driver and they get on a bike, that they're aware of their position on the road. But the number of people who get on the bike on the road for the first time, or when they're being watched, and they hug the pavement, which is where all of the potholes are, where all of the nasty stuff, the mulch. And so trying to encourage people in the same way that they would feel more confident with their body posture. If you're saying to someone, be more confident, you sit up and you occupy your space. I encourage riders to take up their space that they are entitled to on the road, and treat other road users with respect, because they know how it feels to be a driver. So we try and work that respectful to everybody. Exactly, and of course, you get silly drivers and you get silly people on bikes.
Well, that's always the case, but it sounds like what you're doing, it's nurturing and enabling these people to find a safe space where they can progress and feel confident to be able to ride and enjoy and have adventures in whatever form that might be. And so there's an aspect here that kind of we haven't touched it yet, because there's the woman's feeling included as well. How, speaking from your own experience, but also the experience of the women that come to you to learn, what are the common kind of barriers there is, and how do you go about kind of overcoming these barriers?
I think the barriers are consistent. There are more probably barriers for women from what I see in my experience, but I would say that from the men that I've worked with, it crosses, I think, the fear of ... And it could be the fear of not being fast enough, not being fit enough, not being safe enough, not having the right gear, not having time, not knowing how to pump up a tire. And all of these questions are absolutely, and all these fears are valid, whoever you are. And I feel enormously privileged to be able to help answer them and signpost people to other individuals and organizations to keep that momentum going.
Yeah, because it's important, because you come to without any prior knowledge, and unless you spend hours researching it, you don't know. And it's so much better when you have someone that has been trained, that can coach you and can allow you the time to do it in a safe space without feeling judged or being pressured into doing it. So the worst thing is that turning up to a club ride and you kind of have to just figure out everything in one go, and more times than not, that leads to a very tragic experience, and that puts off a lot of people because the clubs, or certainly the clubs that I started with, don't cater to so much to newbies. You kind of have to trying to learn in as you go.
There are some amazing clubs and I think this is the thing, you just got to find your tribe. And I think the thing with the Personal Cyclist is that it's a shortcut to that. If you want to ride, find something that you can do alone or in a group that will help your bank balance, that will help your body, and that will help the planet. The Personal Cyclist is a shortcut to that, because it will tick those boxes in a personalized, efficient way. And then we signpost. So I send people to cycling clubs a lot. And people ask me for advice on cycling clubs a lot. And I'm happy to recommend individuals, because depending on the club, and one thing we never do if we're riding in a group is talk about, small things like the really great club for women, if you're talking about women specific, the clubs that don't talk about average pace, for example, because most newish riders won't really know what their average pace is. They won't be into crunching the data necessarily. They will want to go out for a lovely ride and if you are wanting to join a club that is about that, there are clubs for that too. So I think there is something out there for everyone. But often it's in the semantics and the way it's communicated, as opposed to most of the riders themselves and the individuals within those clubs are really great people. It's more just how it's communicated and how it's positioned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, interesting. No, it's very true. It's very true. It's I think there now more than ever, cycling clubs, communities, or individuals are aware of that and are creating the environments, the spaces, the opportunities for people that don't want to be riding fast. They just want to go on adventures, go on a chilled out ride and just do it in their own pace. And that's great because it opens up the opportunities for people that, like perhaps the customers that come to you that are fearful of attempting something that it feels a bit too dangerous or don't feel confident enough about taking that next step. Do you, as part of your coaching, is there, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is a great opportunity to create kind of a community, because obviously you are working with almost in a kind of a safe space in the smaller groups. It allows people to create a strong bond between each other as they are learning or going in this learning journey together. So is there a way that you kind of nurture this community and kind of build it up to, or it like, and challenge them as well? Because there is the possibility as well, once they start feeling confidence, then, what's the next step? What is the next challenge? Or by challenge, I mean, going further or going by themselves or going on a sportive or whatever it might be.
It's a really good question. So it goes back to this idea of bespoke and personal, because everybody's different. But one thing we've done successfully is teamed up with some really cool brands like Live Cycling, like the Brownlee Centre, which is a mile of parkland in North Leeds, and brought together 40, right. 50, 60 women at a time to ride in a safe space with a social element to it, with a bit of fun, learn some new tricks, and meet other people in the same position as you. I mean, often we find that some of our individual clients, I've worked quite a lot with Cycling UK to bring in individuals onto bikes who might otherwise not be able to afford to do that or to be able to justify getting the bike and the gear.
Right.
And some of the individuals I've noticed in those groups have started going off and they send me photos. Oh, we've been off. I met so-and-so at your ride at Sweaty Betty. We've just been off for a 5-mile ride, 10-mile ride. So it's organic at the moment. In terms of formalizing it, we're looking to do seasonal rides. I did quite a bit of work with hotels in a previous life and have started working with some really amazing hotels in Yorkshire to start, because I was finding that hotel guests need things to do. Hoteliers need their guests to find things to do. And when groups and individuals come to a hotel, sometimes they're a bit daunted because they don't know where they are. So those groups, again, we take them out on sometimes the hotel's bikes to showcase the incredible areas that these hotels are in. So in answer to your question, in terms of a community, it's organic and it grows. And we have individuals who've gone from sort of not being able to ride a bike to riding sportives, to some who just want to be doing some, non-exercise based activity, but keeping their activity levels moving for their own health. So it's such a diverse group of people. It's nice seasonally to bring them together, both in person, as I mentioned at the Brownlee Centre. We've also done some work online as well to bring that group together as a social. So it's growing all the time.
Yeah, it's important. Well, I think that's how you grow a community, is organically. You create a space where people can come together, and you provide the tools and the resources for them then to use. And the sign that then you are creating communities, that they are coming back. They come back because they like what you're doing. They like the personality, they like the atmosphere, And that's how you start building the community without forcing it. There's also an interesting point about that you mentioned that I think is quite a strategic point from a business perspective, which is partnering up with hotels, because that aspect of the recreation of using the bicycle as a tool to explore the countryside, to explore the outdoors, and that's perhaps an untapped opportunity for the business, for your business, but also for the hotels that you partner with, because it allows them to provide a service that differentiates them from other services. Is that an opportunity that you see kind of as an entry point for people that wouldn't otherwise think that riding bikes is for them? I was just thinking that in the work that you do is it's a very specific type of people coming to you. But when you are entering the hotel partnerships, then that opens and widens the possibilities of what, the people that you're touching, the people that you're connecting.
I've always loved working with hotels and hoteliers, and have done quite a lot. Early in my career, I worked with the Soho House Group and a group of international hotels called One and Only. I understand that hoteliers, if they're going to have guests staying in their hotels for multiple nights, need to find some cool stuff for them to do. And we're blessed in Yorkshire. We're in the top 3 destinations for 2024 in Condé Nast Traveller this year. So Yorkshire's a great place to do that. We've got some phenomenal hotels, which, were showcased during the Tour de France 10 years ago. But, it's an amazing place to ride a bike on every level. And the hotel guests that I take out and the corporate groups who come to Yorkshire have a great time, because there are some amazing places to see. Equally, often when you go to a hotel, you don't know where to go necessarily. You can be signposted, but being taken and shown by bike is a really unique way to see the surroundings. I always joke, wouldn't it be brilliant if all estate agents took potential house owners round villages to go and look at houses, because you use the quiet roads, you see houses and towns and villages from a really unique perspective, and you see the world from a unique perspective. You have to slow down, you have to look at your environment, and there's just something really special about going on a bike ride and then going back to your hotel and really feeling like you've earned that cup of tea, slice of cake, pint of beer, whatever. And so for me, it felt like a natural partnership.
Yeah, of course, and then it obviously ties in with your past experience and your past expertise in working with hotels. So it's kind of marries very well together, and this is also what a lot of tourist sport are craving. They through the power of cycling, they want people to come to their amazing landscapes and regions, because you are able to discover the landscape and you're able to fall in love with it through riding through the countryside, finding the villages. That's a brilliant idea about the estate agents taking buyers on like little tours of the villages or the towns. Yeah, that would be different.
When guests come to hotels or people are looking for holidays, oftentimes they might think, oh, I'm not going to borrow that bike because I don't know where to go, or I haven't been on a bike for years. And that's where we can help. And I think that's the big thing, that actually you don't need to be a 100-mile-a-week rider to come and enjoy the world by bike.
Yeah, of course.
And I think sometimes that can be off-putting. And I think it's like any of these activities. We can tailor it to all abilities.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that it opens up the possibilities, opens up the doors to anyone that just wants to explore. It doesn't have to be for a particular type of person. So I wanted to shift gears here, because there's an interesting fact about you, is that you have taken part in a piece of research with the Leeds Beckett University. And I kind of wanted to understand a bit more about this, because you have taken part in a kind of a study that showed you something that you were perhaps not quite aware. I wonder if you could talk more about that experience and what made you understand of the world of cycling.
I was really interested in this one because Leeds Beckett University is not far from me, and it's an amazing hub, obviously with some incredible resources and alumni, and the Brownlee brothers just being two. So we've got this incredible hub in Yorkshire, and a plea came out asking for volunteers for guinea pigs to try some of to be part of quite a pioneering experiment into female cyclists. And what I discovered through doing this with the amazing team there was that there's just so little research. This is a couple of years ago now, and there's just virtually nothing on female physiology and how it responds to intense periods of exercise. So for me, it was a personal interest moment. I wanted to immerse myself into all elements of the bike world, and this was just one part, and it was on my doorstep, and I thought, I've got to be part of this. And yes, the usual self-doubt creeps in. Am I going to qualify? Is my lung capacity going to make the grade? Am I going to be laughed out of the lab? And I was nervous, and passed the entry requirements to get into this cohort. The experiment was to look at the impact of riding your bike, having had food inside you, or riding on an empty stomach. Now, there's been loads over the years in magazines and in papers around running, for example. There's lots of talk about, you should never run. Anecdotally, don't train in the gym if you're full, or always when to eat versus when to exercise. But for bikes, and for women particularly, there was nothing. So I'd always worked on the basis that little and often, and anecdotally about how many miles or how often, every 45 minutes, taking on some nutrition. Beyond that, beyond in terms of the nitty gritty, okay, do I need to train fasted or unfasted to make me a stronger athlete? No one could really answer that question. So that was part of the experiment. And it was an interesting one because trying to find enough female volunteers, I think, was a real battle for the team. Because there just aren't enough people willing to step up and do it. But they did find enough, and the evidence and the findings were actually very, very personalised. So in terms of whether or not it is preferable, it's all about personal preference. Although the likelihood, we talk about this a lot with clients, the likelihood of you bonking after not consuming anything and riding 20, 30, 40 miles is much higher. But that's why, the joy of having some sports nutrition, not gels, and I'm not a big fan of gels, if I'm really honest, is really important. And it really taught me, the whole experience, that there is we're not talking about sort of professional athletes here. We're talking about individuals who are wanting to go on bike rides of 20 to 40 miles recreationally, knowing the differences between, say, running and riding, and knowing your own body and being prepared if you're going to go out on a ride is super, super important, and learning about your own body and responding to it. I think a lot of clients come to me and say, I'm a regular runner. I do a 10K on an empty stomach, and I have to explain that it's going to feel very different doing 10, 15 miles on a bike. And often they only learn when they turn up for a group ride having had no breakfast. And that's where my back pockets start unloading all the snacks.
Yes. It's reflecting on the lack of research on women athletes or women enthusiasts. It's quite sad to know that. I'm aware of that fact, that quite very little research is done on women athletes, but it does again portray the fact that there needs to be more gender parity, there needs to be more inclusion at all levels. And also interesting that the fact that you mentioned about the stories of that the nutrition needs to be personalized, and you kind of need to learn as you go, and that's kind of that's part of what you do as well, to impart your knowledge that you have gained through your own experience, through this research that you took part on. Is there any, like, from these kind of stories of personal growth, is there any stories that stick in your memory of people that have come to you and kind of have been on a transformational journey through kind of working with you?
Oh God, there are loads. We had one. I mean, the obvious ones are the individuals who haven't been on a bike for many years and who just want to rediscover being on two wheels, and they come to me and they'll say, I think I just want to do a few miles, and then over time actually they very quickly realize they're capable of more than they ever thought. And the first part is to just build confidence and self-belief, and competence comes with that. I always ask people to practice in between. We often take individuals right back to square one, and I ride alongside them, or one of my fellow ride leaders will ride alongside them.
Right.
So one particular lady, she came and she wasn't riding at all, and then within 4 months, I think it was 4 or 5 months, she rode a 40-mile sportive solo, and actually it was so much more than the riding for her. It was confidence. It was about doing something on her own, separate to her family, and showing her children that she'd beyond a mum. She was able to do something for herself, to improve her health, to improve the perception of how she felt about herself and how others saw her. So for me, it's a massive privilege to see someone grow in that way. I think on the other side of things, I had an ex-military PT approach me, who'd been involved in a crash, a quite serious crash, which coincided with quite a few changes at home with his family, and it had a traumatic prospect getting back on the bike, and he was desperate to commute on the bike. And for him, that was all about psychology, and that's where I have a really amazing colleague at Leeds, Beckett, who supported me with this, to help this individual relearn how to control his body back on the bike. He was involuntarily experiencing a genuine physical fear. So that's where we could work somewhere like the Brownlee Centre in North Leeds, because it's traffic, pothole free, there's space, there are no dangers that you'd experience on the road, and we could relearn how to descend at speed. The other thing that I was really quite strict with him on is that he was it's a bit of a cliche, very, very keen on his tech. And I see a lot of riders who sit looking down on their devices and not keeping their head up, looking at the car in front of the car in front. And so his positioning and his line were as much important as what was going on in his head and his belief, and actually stripping everything off. So we took off every single piece of tech and gadgetry, including, I think, his watch, just to ride laps over and over again, and to ride quieter hills, repeat, and actually chatting, socializing and enjoying that ride helped retrain his brain to think, actually, biking is a really pleasurable thing, and I'm going to enjoy myself, and I'm going to relax, and then I'm going to build back up the skills that I need. But sometimes taking away the tech is the first step, because it alters your mindset, and it also alters your position. Where he's riding a very steep downhill where he had an accident to work routinely, and it's a privilege when you get messages back saying, I've just done it and I feel so much more confident, and I'm doing what I was doing before, but I'm not worrying about how fast I'm going. It's about enjoying it, and bringing someone on that journey is a total privilege.
Yeah, for sure. That's very powerful, because, well, just hearing those stories of people, the first case, the first example, just the fact that the bike represented freedom, represented individuality to that person, to that woman, to be able to just be herself, to enjoy time, and kind of just proved to herself, I guess, that she was able to do it. And in the same way to the last example, that's kind of allows people to reconnect and with themselves. I think with the nature of pedaling or riding is the one, it gives you the freedom, gives you the sense of freedom of traveling and exploring new places, and two is allows you to be in the present, to not, like you're saying, the distractions of the tech and getting lost on that. The fact just having that, being in the present moment and just forgetting about the rest and just enjoying. I think that's a key aspect of being in the moment and enjoying riding a bike. It's so often what brings people to the sport is that those feelings, and then what people do with that then is up to them, but more often than not is that feeling of freedom, of being in the moment, that brings people to enjoy riding bikes. I think I wanted to ask you, like for the people listening, might have experienced difficulties in the past or are not comfortable in riding in a group. From your cycling journey, from your experience, what would you say to them? What advice would you give to them?
I would always say, do what you want to do, not what you feel you need to do. I hear a lot of people say, oh, but I need to be riding at X speed, or I need to be this size before I can wear this kit. And I just think life's too short. So I would encourage everybody to really imagine themselves in a situation with the wind through their hair in a beautiful sunny day, and where would they like to be, and if that is in riding in a group with others, or if that's riding on their own, that's absolutely where they should be. There's that element. I'd also say I always encourage everybody to try something a little bit out of their comfort zone, and I think having someone like me or anybody who works in a similar sort of role, whether it's in a swimming environment and a gym environment, any sort of well-being coach environment, you want to be supported to do something that you might have already maybe not quite considered. But you need to start somewhere where you feel excited and motivated. Otherwise, you'll never do it. So I do think that doing something that you want to do rather than you feel like you ought to or you need to, because it's exhausting before you even start.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I guess and it's short term. If you like you said, if you have to enjoy it. If you are doing it because you feel like you need to do it, probably you will start it, but then it means that down the line you'll forget why you started in the first place, and then you'll give up. So that there is that element as well. It all it all comes down to, again, enjoying the process and doing it for the right reasons. I wanted to say it's interesting that the way you have been kind of using your experience, your own transformational journey, learning how to ride a bike, or relearning how to ride a bike in your late 30s, and now inspiring and empowering women, men to also be on that same journey. I wanted to ask you, what does success look like to you?
I mean, personal success, or for the business, for the brand?
Let's say personal success.
For me, I have to sort of practice what I preach. So pushing myself outside my comfort zone, just joining this podcast today is really exciting and nerve-wracking in equal measure, which is, I think, part of the magic. I would love to be doing more of what I do, and reaching more people. So for me, trying new things, I've a burning ambition to try some bike packing. Having not been a fan of camping as a kid, I've got that itch I want to scratch. So for me personally, that's something I'd like to give a go. But for my day-to-day life, just collaborating with more cool brands and organizations in the public and private sector, and individuals. I seem to attract some really nice clients. I'm sure everyone says that, but the people that we've worked with one-to-one or in groups, everybody is up for enjoying the ride. Everybody is nervous, admittedly, as you would be trying something new, but getting to work with people who are passionate, whether it's in active travel, whether it's in the sport and the competition of cycling, there's that golden thread that runs through, that there is a passion for an activity. To some it's a sport, but there is a passion there, and I really enjoy being part of that. So being able to inspire more people and to support more people with getting onto two wheels in whatever form it happens to be, for me is success.
That's brilliant. It's just it goes to show that the purpose that you have in being able to inspire people to enjoy an adventure, enjoy life on two wheels in whatever shape that takes. There is something that I wanted to ask, and this question comes from a place of curiosity. So, and this I ask it because you are in this context. So you are a mom. What advice would you give to moms that are in a similar position that you were a few years ago, like want to be able to do something that takes them out of their comfort zone, and they see riding bikes as one way of doing that? What advice would you give to them?
I think if you'd have asked me 15 years ago that there was this thing you could do that gave you freedom, joy, it was help the planet, it saved your bank balance, and it made you feel and look great, and by the way, it's cycling, I wouldn't have believed you. So I would say to other women, yeah, there's always a reason why there isn't time, there isn't budget, but there are ways to access cycling as an activity, and that you might not realize, and that there are lots of other people who are in the same position. It's very easy to think, looking at social media, that everyone has everything together and everyone knows what they're doing and they've got it all sorted, and it's just not true. So there are loads and loads of people and loads of ways of accessing cycling, whether it's for fitness, whether it's just as a new skill. The great thing for me about the bike, and I think it offers it for many women, is it ticks. We women are multitaskers, right? The bike is a multitasking a mechanical dream. It allows you to do so many different things and so many different purposes, and there's not many things you can do. The bike just ticks so many boxes, and but I do completely understand it can be intimidating to get going, and that's where I've been there and I know it, and it can seem like you're the only person, and yeah, often it is as simple as getting back on the bike, but sometimes you need that reason and you need that nudge and you need a bit of support to get going. And yeah, I'd also say that it's okay if you haven't been on the bike for many, many years, or you haven't been on the bike at all. It doesn't mean you've failed. The fact of just getting up on and dusting down the bike is a win. I also think it's really, really important to show our kids that we do something separate to them, and we have something independent that we can do that is not just about our children, whether that's work, whether that's our activity, because our children will grow up and move on, and we still want to, I harbour dreams of doing all sorts of bike rides and trips with my husband when the children leave home. So for me, the bike is a facilitator to do lots and lots of different things, and I do feel like it can be for everyone, and there is a way to enter the world of cycling at every point. It's sometimes just not knowing where to go.
Yeah, well, I think your answer will lift up the spirits of people that can relate to you. I mean, it's just listening to you has kind of energized me, as like, because it's inspired. I feel inspired just listening to what you just said. So I think people will relate to what you said. So I think it's important that you share that message with whoever is listening. I wanted to sort of bring to a close our conversation, and with the tradition that I started on the podcast, which is every guest leaves a question to my next guest, not knowing who they are. So the question that was left for you is perhaps on the personal side, but I'll let you decide that. So the question is this one: if you could change one character trait, what would it be?
Oh, that's really easy for me. It's impatience. I'm really impatient. I want everything to happen now, and I want it all to be done and ready, and yeah, I would wholeheartedly say impatience from a very young age.
Very good.
Just can't wait.
The urge to get things done. Yeah. Was that the how you felt about with the cycling? Just like, oh, I need to learn everything I can just to be ready.
Yeah, I mean, I think what my sensible brain will say to me will be, you're never really ready and you can't do everything all at once. So take it bit by bit, but it's inherent in me to want to help and to want to move things on. I do feel like cycling as an activity, as a health and well-being activity, has a way to go to communicate its benefits. It's quite fragmented, in my opinion, the world of the bike and the C word, the cyclist, can mean really positive things in one hand and quite negative connotations in the other. And I just feel like we're all cyclists if we get on two wheels, and for whatever reason, and we must respect everybody's ways of being on a bike. So yeah, I feel like from a bike perspective, I'm keen to help make a difference as much as I can and make cycling a little more civilized and a lot more fun, and do it with a smile on my face.
Yeah. Brilliant. So I guess now is the time for you to put my next guest on the spot. What question would you like to leave to my next guest?
Something like, what would you tell your younger self? What advice would you give your younger self from, say, 10, 15 years ago?
That's a very good question. It's the first on the podcast as well. Yeah, that's a brilliant question. Kate, it's been a pleasure. Like I said, I felt inspired by your journey and how you shared it, and how you're inspiring women, men to also come with you in this journey and feel empowered about having the confidence of riding bikes and having fun, not thinking about what they need to be doing, what is the right way of doing it. Just having fun is what matters the most. So I think it's important for me to share your story.
Thank you. I really appreciate what you've done, and I'm in esteemed company. So you've got some fantastic interview guests. So I'm really enjoyed it, and I'm really appreciative of you inviting me on. Thank you.
Wow, what a great conversation with Kate. She brings so much energy to the room, and her work with the Personal Cyclist is more than just a cycling coaching program. It's a movement towards a more inclusive, supportive, and joyful cycling culture. Her story has inspired me, and I hope it inspires you as well. And it's an opportunity to think of cycling as a path to personal freedom and to connect with other people. If you listened this far to the episode, please leave us a review. I'll be forever grateful. And remember to tune in to next week's podcast, where Kate's question will be answered by my next guest. Until then, thanks for listening.